So I just want to acknowledge my bias. I'm an old school Hunger Games fan. You can call me a stan, you can call me a nerd, you can call me a shill. Hello lovelies and welcome back to the channel. Here we talk about movies, TV, travel, and everything geeky. And today we are doing a review of the new Hunger Games film, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I've seen a lot of confusion from people who aren't in the fandom who may have seen the trailer but not really been involved in some of the previous discussion of this story. This is not a continuation of the original series. This is based on a prequel novel that original writer Suzanne Collins wrote a couple of years ago, and it follows a teenage version of President Snow, the main antagonist and president of Panem in the original Hunger Games trilogy, and gives some background to him. Tune into some spoilers. It essentially says that he was a war orphan living in the capital in the days following the rebellion that led to the creation of the Hunger Games. And in this story, he ends up involved in a school project where he is a mentor for that year's female tribute from District 12, Lucy Gray Baird. So as far as performances, I thought there were some really good, solid standouts in this. Particularly, everyone has been heaping well-deserved praise on Viola Davis and Peter Dinklage, who of course both are always fantastic, just ate and left zero crumbs, especially Davis. Tom Blythe and Rachel Ziegler as the leads, I thought were quite good. I've seen some criticism of Rachel's accent use in this. They really leaned into the Cubby characters, which is the traveling group that she's a part of, their Appalachian kind of ancestry and how that ties into District 12. I didn't think the accent was terrible. I thought it didn't distract me. When it comes to plot, I had the same issues with this film that I did with the book. I thought it was actually a fairly strong adaptation. It hits almost all of the same major plot points as the book and lands Snow in the same place. I would actually say that with the complaints that I've seen people have about the third act, I actually thought this came off a little bit more cleanly to me than it did in the book. I thought that a lot of the set dressing and fight choreography that is always very, very strong in these movies was, again, extremely strong, especially after rewatching the rest of the Hunger Games series yesterday before I went to see this movie. I don't think this is something that is going to necessarily make you go crazy if you are not a Hunger Games fan or if you have no other context for Hunger Games, because a lot of what is being done here is weaving in some of this mythos around Lucy Gray and her relationship with Snow, connecting into Snow's relationship with Katniss in the original trilogy. But in all, I actually thought this was possibly my second favorite Hunger Games film. I thought this flowed a bit better than Mockingjay Part 1 and 2, and it had the same director as the last three of the original Hunger Games movies did, so it didn't have some of the inconsistencies if you're comparing the later movies to the first movie. I will say some of the violence in this was a bit more visceral and more reminiscent of a couple of the early scenes in the first movie, if that is something that really bothers you. Although if violence against children is a hard no for you, maybe just avoid Hunger Games in general. But I think Snow's character evolution through this story is definitely something that'll be of interest to fans, showing how Snow has kind of a combination of nature and nurture in going from this relatively innocent kid who has some maybe narcissistic and controlling tendencies from his upbringing and maybe naturally with his family, how that snowballs into him becoming the ruthless, terrifying villain that we all know. Do I want to see more from this story? I would say maybe. I think a follow up to this showing Snow climbing the ranks of the Capitol government could also be very interesting. But I also think there are other potentially more compelling stories to tell in this universe than more of Coriolanus Snow. But I am still very, very invested in the world of Hunger Games. I think some of the ideas that it conveys are still very relevant and thought provoking, and at least in the books, are conveyed in a really sensitive and interesting way. I think maybe slightly less so in the movies. Although I think this film probably did the best in a lot of ways of showing in a really intimate way how the capital and the mentality of some of the people at the head of it twist normal people. But in all, I think it's another strong dystopian action film if you enjoyed the other movies. If you're looking for anything particularly groundbreaking or revolutionary, this is not your movie. It falls into a pitfall that I think a lot of prequels do, where it does more in terms of adding backstory and filling in some knowledge gaps than it does actually moving forward major revelations or changes to how the audience should view the previous stories or the universe. And I think this presents the Capitol in a very different way than the later Hunger Games movies do, because it's very kind of brutal and primitive in a way that the other movies really aren't. So fans, I think, will have fun going back to Panem and finding out more about this universe. I know I did. If it's not your thing, it will remain not your thing. But that's just my opinion. Leave your thoughts in the comments. And remember, if you're out there wandering, either out in this wide world or just in your head, you're not alone.